This video, I'm going to try to walk through with all the stuff I've been learning about rendering audio using Azure Speech. So I'll go over a lot of stuff. So this is kind of a catch up as well to where I'm at in the process. So let's, what I'm going to do here is I went to my speech studio assistant, or not my speech, my studio character studio assistant, who knows all about my characters, and we went back and forth with the rehearsal, talking about what characters um, might be talking about, and it generated a dialogue based on the profiles it has of the various characters. And this is a bar opening, and the bar owner and the main bartender talking before the bar opened. So just kind of casual conversation. And what it does is it generated a document, and let me get to it. It's over here. And I could it generates these really fast. So I could give it all kinds of different situations and different characters that it's already got, and it'll create dialogues like this document. And it creates a document that looks sort of like this. And so I just want to kind of go over it. It says, what's going on for this experience. It's called, these are called experience moments because I'm building experiences and there's just some moments. This is a scene or an episode, basically. It's just a scene in an episode. That's what it would amount to. With the experience being the episode and the moment being the set of dialogue. And it says it's Dave and Brenda. Dave is the bar owner and Brenda's the head bartender. Uh, and it's their daily opening check-in. It's an afternoon gestalt, and you've seen it, I can change the way the bar looks between afternoon and evening with a setting inside of a sequencer. But, and the lounge has not yet become tonight's destination. It will still belong to the people who prepare it. Dave arrives after Brenda's already been there. And so it sets it up what it is. And then it turns it into beats, and beats are like segments of conversation. So it breaks it up, and this is all generated by the Character Studio AI based on prompts, and based on documents it has that identify the characters in a great amount of detail. That of course, it generated as well by doing rehearsals with me, by just talking with me about the characters. So it says Dave unlocks the door, the key sticks, he mutters, blah, blah, blah. And then Dave says afternoon. Brenda smiles and says, you're late. Dave, glances at the clock and says, the clock's fast. Brenda finally looks at him just long enough. Brenda says, She returns to wiping the bar. Dave smiles. Conversations happened before. Just not exactly this one. Dave looks around the lounge, the jukebox, looks at the empty dance floor, the stage. So it sets up everything that could be turned into a sequence thing. So it tells a little story. And then he goes to beat 2, where Dave will say, feels quiet. Brenda will say, won't stay that way for long. A few seconds pass. Neither of them feel compelled to fill the silence. Dave walks towards the calendar, more habit than purpose. And Dave says, the fair wrapped up yesterday. And then Brenda's lining glasses behind the bar, blah, 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 and says, and then another pause. And Dave says it ought to help. And Brenda nods slightly. And then Brenda changes the conversation and says, Mary call. And goes on. So it's basically this dialogue. So that gets generated. So that's what I have. That's my input. To another assistant. My other assistant now, I used to do this really deterministic. I had a bunch of Python programs and generated stuff, and it went crazy. But now I go ahead and I send it to my performance studio, which will take it and take that talking and generate what is called a manifestation or a take, and so it will generate it. And I've chosen to go with an audio take. So one of the things I do, or a set of things that are new, is you'll see a bunch of documents here. And these documents, I started categorizing, like for example, this is the uh, let me see if I can find, on here, let's talk about this. Like, first of all, I have a document that describes the Performant Assistant's onboarding, telling it what it should do. So if you kind of look at it, this gives you a background in how to train an AI. So these are the documents I use, send to the AI, and to an AI conversation, telling it this is how you should act. And so it describes, it says, welcome to the Discover World Studio. You're a performance assistant. So this gets sent to it as a prompt, basically. Your responsibility is to faithfully embody approved creative work using the capabilities of your current manifestation medium. All that's saying is it says it gets the creative work it gets is what we just looked at, it's a dialogue. And it's been told that its current manifestation medium is generate audio dialogue. And eventually there may be other manifestation mediums that we do. It may be generate a AI video, but I've only figured out audio to start with. So you're a performer, act like an actor interpreting a completed script. So I'm basically telling it to be a voice actor. And so it talks about its place in the studio, and it talks about the other assistants and who they are and what they do and what its relationship is to them. Discusses some of my theory on brain versus body, and this is the body. So basically what happens is the creative character studio is the brain, so it comes up with what's creative, and this is a body. It's supposed to be the performer. It's not supposed to. It's got a little bit of leeway, but it's not supposed to be creative. It's supposed to act. So again, this gets very detailed, and AI, of course, helped me generate this. I have a set of um, architect assistants that help me as an architect figure this all out. So, and it basically, here's where it says and tells it what stop, where to do it, what the responsibility is, and so on. So it's been given that as its onboarding document. So it knows who it is by that. But then there's a whole bunch of detailed documents, and that's what these other ones you see, 15 of them or so, and they're more low level. So it has a contract with me, which is more of the same, and that's this is more specifically saying, here's what you absolutely can and can't do. Here's what you'll get for input. Here's what you output. So it's a very specific. The other one kind of described in general what it is. This describes more specifically what it can do. So it's just a more detailed document of the same thing you saw. The other documents I did is I have a capability catalog. So I tell it about what things it has available to it to be able to go do that. And there's way more detailed documents about that later on. This was just the basic document. Then I have, I tell it specifically, I told it about in the role contract that you're going to generate SSML, which is the Azure XML that you use to feed and control what gets generated by Azure in terms of audio. And so this just talks more about it. Again, this got written after we did a lot of experimenting. So again, this is telling it what it should do, and it also has a schema. But the and let's also go to style guide. The style guide is the most powerful thing I've done, and it tells that, okay, there's a documented stuff on what um, Microsoft Azure can do. The style guide says, but here's exactly what I want you to do using that. So if I look at that again, that goes specifically, it talks about, as you're putting together this SSML, what are your rules? You know, I preserve before enhance. So um, so basically that says don't change performance, and that says use natural conversation. That silence is good. Uh, don't compensate. Don't add to it. Allow me to add to it. Not, you don't go ahead and take too much responsibility. And again, so I give it a set of lower level documents that I was going to write. And so this is just a summary. And then here's all the lower level ones. So I talk about the approved voice IDs, uh, how to generate a spoken document. All spoken content must be inside an explicit voice statement. Just rules. These are rules of saying, even though there's rules with an XML, these are more style rules. Here's how I want you to generate it specifically with rules. And another one is I've got voice character profile specs. So I generated a set of voice characters instructions where and this is the document that says what should be in a voice character profile that I came up with. And here's the profiles I generated. They're pretty simple, but they're basically, I wrote one for Dave. So it's trying to talk about how it should sound when it talks. And I also wrote one for Brenda over here, which is the bartender. So it's, again, just giving it more information and pronunciation. And I came up with some other lower level documents that say, here's how you do, how you use phoneme, and how it will be used to override different things. And this just talks about that specifics. And these were all generated after I did a bunch of experiments. And I also, and that ended up, I spent 4 or 5 days doing experiments and came up with this. That's all the instructions that I gave it to say, do your best shot at generating a SSML document. And so I sent it, just to give you an idea, I sent it through the SSML. I sent all those prompts, all those documents the AI has, and I sent it from the character studio, the dialogue we saw to start with, and it generated this SSML, and this is SSML. So it generated basically, took that stuff, and you see here's the afternoon, you're late, the doc this, but it's generated inside of the XML. That's a controlled document that does that, and has added some things to it. It's added some tags for like laughter here, which is it's known as a linguistics type control. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and I'll show you that in a second. But so it generated this just basic view of it. So this is what it generated as a speaking, and that gets sent to Azure. So I would send it through, and here's an example. I wrote a piece of Python that here's a command here that I say, hey, use the harness, the Azure SSML harness Python program I wrote. And here is the input, and the input is that SSML document I just showed you. And the output is just stick it into a WAV file. So it takes that and generates the audio. It takes this and generates the audio. Before I go ahead and observe it, I want to show that after I've done this many times now, and as part of that, I discovered that it falls short, and so I came up and looked into, or could fall short. As I learn more, it'll get closer. But there's a bunch of lower level kinds of things that I can put into the SSML, but I don't ask it to do it, to improve on things like phonemes and so on. So if I look at that, I generated this after doing a bunch of experiments. A practical experience composer guide, how to get the best vocal performance using Azure Dragon HD Omni, and that's a voice class, Azure voice class. And there's like 10 voices that I can choose from. So, and this talks about all the stuff I understood. And because of that, there's a bunch of things that you can add to it. And basically, this is the current model here. And the current model basically says the dialogue, which we've seen, and the character voices. So I chose the voices. And a performance style, which was that performance document I gave it, that described how I want it to organize the SSML. And then there's a bunch of different things I can do at lower levels to shape that. So what you saw as the SSML is kind of the first go at it. After that, I will use this document. This document's written for me to say, what are the choices? What are the things I can go and add to modify that SSML to make it more exactly what I want? And this document is, I think, I wish somebody had written it besides me, but it came out to be the how do you go ahead and do things inside of SSML, which isn't directly, there's some examples on their website, but some of them took experiment. They say a lot of stuff that is sort of true or not true, or the examples they give you aren't very good examples, But anyway, I've gone through and I've developed all those different things about silence, how to do pronunciation better, how to use phonemes to override, the way it's pronouncing a word, how to use things like stress, which they don't talk very well, but that's basically, I could say, if you had if you had a 3-syllable word, which syllable does it stress? I mean, that's what stress is. Performance style. So basically, how can you get it to sound angry or shout or whisper or stuff like that? So I looked into that and how to go do that, and I didn't have it use that out of the box. But I can add these after the fact as I'm trying to improve on the result. Style degrees, you can say, how angry do you want it to be? Kind of angry, not as angry. Paralinguistics is the thing I talked about, are things like laughter, coughing, breathing, sighing. Instead of having to find my own WAV files and incorporate them somehow, it's got the ability to do those. The paralinguistics, and I tested that quite a bit. And what other stuff can I do? Text as part of the performance direction is you can say, you can type in capitals, get out of here with 3, with exclamation points, and it'll stress that more than if it just sees the word get out of here. So things I've discovered with playing with the text, and passing it to SSML. So, and it does, it reads from the context, and from the context of the voice or the conversation that's going on, it starts implying things like this, which is good and bad. You're not in total control. It's generating it, but you can do some stuff, and I have some more planned experiments down the road for controlling that more. You could actually type in the text what you want it to go do. You're angry, blah, blah, blah. But then it will just read that out as saying, you're angry, blah, 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 blah. And then it'll do the words, that are spoken by the actor. And it will actually make those words angry. But the fact is that you can't just give it instructions, metadata kind of instructions. If you give it an instruction in the text, it reads it as text, but it also thinks that that's context. So it's real bizarre how that does it. But anyway, and there's other things. So I looked at shouting, I looked at hesitation, I looked at something called scale, which is like rate, how fast they talk, and that type of thing. So I looked at a lot of different things that they kind of talk about, and it looked like there was in the schema, and tested them, and came up with an approach, an overall approach. This is the user manual you can't buy, on how I would be able to go ahead and modify it. So I've got this, and I just wanted to show it, and I'll be using this to try to improve the discussions. Now, I did run this through here, and so this is the raw, now the latest version raw text of how does it sound. So here's how it sounds doing that. Doing that dialogue. So, let me get it back. Here it goes.
Afternoon.
You're late.
Clock's fast. Feels quiet.
It won't stay that way.
Fair wrapped up yesterday. Oughta help.
Neri called.
Everything all right?
Her mom's back in the hospital.
She coming tonight?
Said she'd try.
Springfield boys called.
They get transportation figured out?
They say.
They said that last time.
Yeah. They draw.
They do. Long as they don't bring last April with them.
Fair enough.
You get hold of Tommy?
Left a message.
He'll call.
You sound awful sure.
He always waits till he thinks you're worried.
Maybe I ought to quit worrying. Coffee's fresh?
If there ain't any left. You waited too long.
So that's an example of how it works. So I'm going to, I would take this, which is all generated by that SML you just saw, and I would add those things that I showed you in my this document, these ways to improve it, whether I need pronunciation, stressing syllables, putting in more silence, changing between the speakers, all that, the laughing, the paralinguistics, the style. Do you want to be more, put a style? You want to be hesitant? You want to be confident? That type of thing. And so I could have done all this and can to improve that. Although, quite honestly, that is not bad. With just, that's knowing who the characters are, knowing where they fit, giving it context in those background documents, sending it the dialogue, and it generated that. So that's where I'm at right now. Pretty pleased. I'm going to go just do a bunch more rehearsals now and see how well it does and how much stuff I have to fix.